Hello, I'm John Richards from Auditing Cloud, and today we're talking about the Center for Internet Security's AWS Foundation's benchmark. We're looking at recommendation 213, ensure MFA Delete is enabled on S3 buckets. This recommendation covers Amazon's simple storage service, more commonly known as an S3 bucket. CIS describes this recommendation as once MFA Delete is enabled on your sensitive and classified S3 bucket, it requires the user to have two forms of authentication. This change requires multi-factor authentication, or MFA, to modify an S3 bucket. The rationale is adding MFA Delete to an S3 bucket requires additional authentication when you change the version state of your bucket or you delete an object version, adding another layer of security in the event your security credentials are compromised or unauthorized access is granted. Compromised credentials are a common entry point for attackers. Requiring multiple methods of authentication makes it much harder for attackers, since a single compromised credential won't be enough. Be aware that this configuration doesn't apply to read access. It only requires MFA authentication for deletion or modification. We have a policy within Auditing Cloud called Enable MFA Delete for S3 Bucket that monitors the configuration settings for this CIS recommendation. Auditing Cloud is an open source, security as code policy engine that monitors your cloud environments for misconfigurations. Enable MFA Delete for S3 Bucket is a security policy that checks AWS S3 buckets to verify their MFA Delete has been enabled. While this has some security benefits, since it could keep intruders from deleting data, it wouldn't stop them from accessing it. Beyond security, MFA Delete can also help prevent accidental bucket deletions. This makes Enable MFA Delete for S3 buckets a good practice, but because of the smaller security scope, we classify this as a low severity issue. Let's look at checking this via the AWS console. We're going to go to the section for S3, and then we'll take a look at the properties section for our bucket. Here inside the properties section, we're looking for bucket versioning. We can see that both bucket versioning and MFA Delete are disabled. To pass this recommendation, those would need to be enabled. Let's do the same check, but via the command line. AWS offers up Cloud Shell for running CLI commands right from the browser. We should list out all of our different buckets, and then we can enter the command to get the status of our bucket versioning. We need to specify the bucket to check, so I can copy that from up above. And if we have MFA Delete enabled, both versioning and MFA Delete would be listed as enabled. But since we don't, nothing is returned with this command. That means it's time to look at remediation. MFA Delete cannot be enabled via the console, so we're going to look at enabling this, doing it via the CLI. You don't want to have to type this all out, so I've included a link in the guide on this command in the video notes. This command requires a root account to run, so you're going to have that ready. You'll also need to specify the bucket to be secured and the root account's MFA. Now, if you use infrastructure as code, you may have built this S3 bucket using a Terraform or CloudFormation script. In that case, you would want to modify the script so the problem isn't replicated on the next deployment. To avoid misconfigurations like this, consider using Auditing Cloud to run policies across your cloud assets. Those assets are easily broken up into custom asset groups based on things like account and cloud provider. Since we're working with S3 buckets, I'll scope this to just AWS. Here we see the Auditing Cloud dashboard, where we could see metrics like average age to remediation, category, criticality, and quantity of violations. Now, earlier we learned that Enable MFA Delete for S3 bucket is a low priority violation, so it would be represented here. We can see the violation listed, so let's go deeper. The violation details show us that this is open, what policy it violates, and the specific resource in violation. So let's look at the resource first. Here we can see all the policies applicable to this asset, and we can see that this asset does fail the check for Enable MFA Delete for S3 bucket. Let's go back to the violation and look at the specific policy. Here we can see that Auditing Cloud monitors this every 6 hours to make sure of compliance, and there's a remediation link to take us to documentation on how to resolve this issue. Check out our free open source repository on GitHub and give us a star. Also, let us know if you have any questions or feedback. Thank you for watching.